Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday, it's March 10th, and this will be our chart lesson for today. And for the most part, this was a range day. We really traded within this range from the open. We opened right, almost right dead center of the range, and we traded through that most of the day. We had a little breakout here, and I believe what that is notice we got this channel working up, and we had this break. Well, it took a while, but we eventually made two legs up, which are the two orange ones, and they're a little difficult to see, but they're almost two measured legs up to a new high, and then prices sold off again back into the range. So both the patterns played out, but really we stayed within this range all day. This was not an easy trading day. When prices are flip-flopping like this and the highs and lows are not consistent, it's difficult to trade. So you can get whipsawed and really quickly, and so you'll notice there's a lot of green ones here, and then really from about 11 o'clock on, there's maybe one or two trades. So it just was one of those days where there's just not a lot of trades, and so it was just a difficult day. There's just not much movement here today. Prices have been trading between 38 and 3900 rather consistently, but today we just kind of hung around this 3900, which is right across the center of this. And notice we were just trading both sides of it, really. Um, and that's typical of how prices will react around the century levels of the 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 4000. Those levels, those 100 century levels are generally, um, especially in the past, lately there's, we're on one of them one day and one the next. But in the past, that was a large move to move 100 points in the ES, and now we do it in a day. So it's just part of the normal volatility, it seems, lately. So, but anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to get through this one, and we'll wrap up today. But again, you can see the trend up. We had the close outside, and that's a fairly large move before we tried to retest, but that's a nice trend up. So it would be very surprising, unless it's going to be a range day, that we wouldn't try a retest. And it just took prices really struggle to go above 3900 here much, and that's the problem. And we finally got it and quickly sold off, although we rallied a little bit right into the close. So I'm going to back out or back in, zoom in, and we'll go over the trades and go from there. Make this where it's a little easier to see. And we were clearly in this two-tiered blue channel at 7 a.m. this morning. And 7 a.m. started way down here, and there's just no real entry. There's a possibility right here on a higher low, but it's a little bit congestive. It's below the EMA. We're looking for a possible retest of this high here, and there's a possibility the blue channel's in play, and this kind of confirms it. So I didn't mark this trade because really this is your signal bar, and it makes the low by a tick there. So it's just hard to mark that trade right there. It's a possibility. It's so close, and it does bounce off the key entry point. If you took it, I wouldn't argue with you, but it's a little bit aggressive. And we pull back here, but we don't get a setup here. Look at my signal bar. It would have been a nice long on a second entry, but my signal bar is not any good. If you got a good signal bar, take it. There's a reversal here, but it didn't get back to the EMA. Usually not a good place to enter. Didn't matter today. It went on up. Then we just start working sideways. And you get a little failed breakout, but you don't want to go short. It's a little early to be going short, especially with this has been a pretty strong move up. And we just work back into the range again. And every bar is from the high to the low, basically, so there's no setup or no good signal bar until finally you get another breakout and a failed second entry short and a chance to go long there. You might have taken that short. I didn't mark it, but this is an uptrend. I don't think you want to go short. You're looking to buy. And so when it fails right there, notice that new low, and you get a first entry short and you get a second entry when it breaks lower there, and it reverses instantly, closes up on its high outside. It's like a breakout pullback. I like going long there on that failure. And that's, I mean, it's almost 9 o'clock, and that's the first decent trade really of the day. So there's another leg back here, but no signal bar, and then you're just kind of stuck in that little congestion, and we end up stuck in this range here. Um, Again, there's no decent buys or sales until right here, and that's just a first entry, so you'd want to wait on the second entry, which comes here, and the signal bar is horrible, and then it fails. I like going short there on that failure because you're going to get at least a scalp out of that, and you may catch a nice run down. Unfortunately, you don't get a runner on this one. There's another second entry right here, but your signal bar is no good. If you had a good signal bar, I wouldn't be afraid to go short right there for a retest of that low. And the bottom really just kind of drops out of this thing. But you can't be entering way down here when you've been away from the MA that long, especially not unless you get a second entry or some kind of trap or something. You could have looked at this as a failed second entry long, but there's not a lot of room there to go short, so I wouldn't enter there. Then of course now we've had our break and a couple of legs down to a new low, and unfortunately you don't get a reversal pattern either. You actually get a failed second entry long here and another chance to go short. Notice that new high, and you break higher there once. That's the first entry. Then it goes lower and breaks higher again. So when it broke above that bar, it's a second entry long. Of course, it's not a good setup. It's just going sideways, but it's probably going to act like a long trap. And if it breaks lower there, you want to be sitting there with a sell stop and look at it go. And again, failures are for advanced traders. If you're a new trader, don't worry about failures. Concentrate on just learning the basics, and once you've got that, the failures will make perfect sense. If you're trying to learn them both at the same time, you're going to struggle, and you're probably not even going to learn how to use second entry. So if you're new, don't worry about failures. You'll see a lot of them marked on the chart because they're good entries, but you need to know what you're doing to trade them. So anyway, we dropped down to it. We got the break outside. We dropped down to a new low, and we turn higher. Not a very good signal bar, or you might have tried to take an aggressive trade back here. It'd be very aggressive. And we just move up. We get a close outside, new high. Again, not a very good signal bar. Your lower high is way down here. You do get a failure right there, but it's a little bit congestive. That's one that you might take because the trend line's still in play and it is a failed second entry long. I'll mark it green. I'm not crazy about it though because it's a little bit congestive. Of course, we drop down here and we make another low. And that is a second entry long right there. It breaks higher right here. I'm pretty sure that does break higher, doesn't it? 38.94. It doesn't break higher, so technically that's not a failed second entry long. It's just a long trap basically and a lower high, and I don't even think I'd take that. I'm going to remove that. That's probably why I didn't mark it before, but I thought it broke higher right there, but it doesn't. It still tried to go higher, so it's probably still going to react the same way, but I'm pretty much a stickler on those traps. They have to technically break, and the count has to be good on those. So really you've really got one leg down and then a second leg down. That's what it looks like to me. And so this would be a second entry long way away from the EMA. The only problem is we don't have a close outside that trend line yet. And you come up here and you turn down and fail and turn up. So there's a little bit of a trap there that you might take back to the long side. But look how big that bar is. Again, it looks like congestion. I just don't like it. Although it's probably going to trap some shorts trying to retest this low. And people just looking at that big bearish bar. The better trade is to wait to here because if it fails, it's a trap, and it does, but it's only good for a scalp. You got just enough there to get a scalp. There might have been an extra tick or two in there, and it turns back down, traps everybody out, and then goes right back where you thought it was. You might enter here because this one's really going to trap some shorts because it trapped out all the longs probably, and now they're going to trap out the longs and trap in some shorts, and when it reverses, it's probably going to pop, and that's exactly what happens. It pops back up to the upper side of and you could have easily seen this is looking like a channel here. That's why I like the long right there, because if you draw it off these two and drag it up, it's fitting perfect, and that's exactly where we go, and then we come back again, back down to the low side. And that's what you would expect prices to go from low to high to low to high. And sometimes you might only get to the midline. When it doesn't go back up there this time, we might get uh, a break with the trend line, and that's what happens. So, but we're trending down here. There's actually a first entry, second entry right there, but you don't want to go long right there that far away from the EMA. And then when it comes back, that's just not a very good signal bar. That little one tick trap below there may trap some people. If you had a little more room back to the EMA, I might say take that trade, but I just think it's risky. We're just chopping along sideways here. There's still a little bit of an upward bias because of this channel, but notice that now we're kind of in a range, and look how flat everything's getting. So we're stuck in this range. We get a little failed break here, and it does bounce off that trend line. And notice there is a first entry and a second entry, but when this bar breaks lower and then can't get above, I'm not too crazy about it. It's not rejection off these lows or this trend line. We run up here and you fail out the upper side. I'd want to wait on at least a lower high there because the bias is somewhat up, and this actually breaks higher and turns down, so that gives you a lower high. By the time this closed, I wouldn't go short there, but if you like this one by trading it, going short on the engulfing bar, it breaks higher and then turns down and goes out. You could have gone short there. I'd be okay with that. But once this bar closed, I don't think I'd go short. That's just too much stem right there. It's not a very good signal bar. There's another attempt to go higher here, but again, a lot of stem, and it doesn't even make an equal low. So you just can't go short there. And then it breaks higher and turns down, but you got to go short way down here where we've been bouncing every time at the midline. And so again, I just don't like it. We get the break of the main trend line working up. You move up, you pull back, so you get a first entry, no entry there, runs all the way up. And so that's a second entry. Actually, it's technically not a second entry short because we never even broke higher here. That's just a first entry short. Lower high, too congestive. Look at the congestion. Just no reason to enter there. Just not good setups. But finally, you've had your break and new high in place for this channel, the blue channel now. And then notice you make a new swing high there. It's higher than this one or this one. And you try to go long once, and you move down, you try to go long twice. It doesn't break lower till here, so it actually tries to go higher 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. And so you could look at that as a failed second entry long either way, but it still triggers at the same spot because it didn't break lower to this bar. And so that would have been a nice trap. I like that one. And then we just run on down here. We don't even get back to the trend line. No setups in here really. You get an overshoot down here. Look how far away we are from the EMA on that overshoot. That's really, really aggressive, but it looks pretty obvious that's an overshoot if we rally back. And it's a very small bar. It's only like 4 ticks, so it's real low risk, but it's still aggressive. So I'm going to leave it as green, but I kind of like that because these will fail on you sometimes. But today, generally, when we've had a reversal, I mean, you can see there was one here that looked similar. All of these are just kind of sudden reversals when we found a bottom. So, and then we just go up and we chop. We actually get a close outside. We don't quite get a new high, though. There's a triple test right there, but without making a new high and no more room there, it's one that you could argue for to be aggressive because it is a triple test. But the problem is it makes a new high each time, and that just doesn't that doesn't feel right to me. But you can clearly see we made the high. We tested it once, we tested it twice. So it's a little aggressive, but it does turn out to be a nice move. And then we reverse again. We made it. We got the break. We got a overshoot, which is like we were just going higher. But we come back and make a new low, and then it reverses. And you get a first entry right there, Notice the new low when it breaks lower right there. That's the first entry short. Then it runs up, and when it breaks below this bar, that's a second entry short. And it comes back to what looks like the trend line if you draw this off the highs and drag it down. And look how bearish that bar is, and it breaks lower and fails instantly and goes all the way out the other side. That takes a lot of buying to do that. The problem is this bar is like how many ticks here? 28 ticks. And so it's just awful risky for a reversal on a day like this right in the middle of the range. I think you're better off to skip it. I just think it's too many ticks. We run up, make a new high, first entry, and so there's another second entry long right here. It's an inside bar though, but it does make matching lows. So again, it's one you could argue for. And then notice what happens. We run up and we go try to go short once. So that's a first entry, and then we went higher again and then turned down again. That's the second entry that fails. So there's a failure there. It's another one you might go long with. And then it suddenly reverses and off we go the other direction. And you just don't really get a chance to go short, and then you're just kind of chopping sideways. But notice that we made that high right there. We tested it once, and we came back and tested it twice, and there's actually a new low there. So first entry, when it breaks lower right here, that's a first entry, and then it runs on up, and when it breaks below this bar, that's a second entry, and that's a big bearish bar and a triple test of the highs. So I like that one just to try to ride it back to here, to the lows. And that's where it goes before it bounces. Then we're running up. We actually confirm this trend line right here. That's your third touch. And then you get a lower high right here. Not a very good signal bar, but it comes back again and gives you a fairly decent signal bar and double confirms that trend line. And so if it breaks higher here, it's going to be a second entry as well. Notice that you got a first entry and then it backs up. So if it breaks higher, that's a second entry long. And again, it confirms the trend line. It actually got confirmed here. I just don't think it was smart to go long on a first entry with not a perfect signal bar, and you got a trend line working through there. But when it tries to go lower 3 times there, that's a pretty good sign that there's strong support. So if we break higher, you'll probably get a scalp. And then it comes back one more time and makes a failure. The only problem here, that's not only a failed second entry short. Technically, it's not a failure because we actually went higher here. I'm not sure if it went lower first and then went higher, or went higher first and then went lower. So either way, it's still technically a failure when it goes higher again right there, and that makes it a second entry too, because you got a new swing high. When it breaks up there, it's a first entry. But the big thing is that's mostly sideways, and it's a failed second entry short, and it's a decent signal bar. It's not perfect, but so if we break higher, you got enough room back to the highs, and there'll probably be some trapped people, and you can tell that they're worried about how that rockets up. And that's why they'll do that sometimes. If they're having trouble taking it higher, they'll let prices back up to trap out the longs and trap in the shorts, and then they reverse it again. And then the momentum of those trap traders, the longs have to re-enter, which creates momentum, and the sellers have to exit and creates more momentum. And then as it rockets up, new traders see the momentum and jump in with it. And that's what makes these big moves like that. And there were probably a lot of sell stops, buy stops of people that don't know how to trade a breakout sitting right up here. And that's why another reason, once it gets through there, it takes off again. But notice how quickly it runs out of momentum once all those stops are run, and it comes right back. And that's why we don't trade breakouts. But there's so many strategies that teach you to buy right there. Well, we're going to look to sell up here. And there was a nice chance to sell right there, but it's at 2 o'clock. You might enter that with that big overshoot and the close. I think I would want to see a true reversal that late in the day, and we just don't get it. So, yeah, not an easy day. Just a lot of chopping around, a lot of green bars in there. Normally I won't even talk about most of those green ones, but I know somebody will ask me about them. So since there weren't a lot of trades, I went ahead and talked about them. But just kind of a slow day with no real direction. The price action is telling us, though. We had the move up and the close outside. So no surprise, you see the two orange. That's your two legs up to a new high. And there's actually two legs of correction in the middle. So it's there, but it's just really messy. And it just, and it's hard to trade this because there's no consistent lows. It's higher, it's lower, it's lower, it's lower, it's higher. It's higher, low, and up here they're all the highs are at different places, and so it's just really hard, unless you're consistently turning off the highs and consistently turning off the lows. It makes it hard to trade because you can get trapped, and that's why you need to probably wait on a lower high if you're selling, or a higher low if you're buying, just to get a little more confirmation that, hey, yeah, prices are turning. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush today. I'm going to wrap this one up so I can get it uploaded at a decent hour today. It's 5 o'clock now. But hope you had a good trading day. We'll be back again tomorrow and wrap up our week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next